Hi, this is Arthur Carmazzi, best-selling author, currently ranked as one of the world's top 10 thought leaders in organizational culture and leadership, and sometimes awesome guy. And welcome to Nights of Transformation. And today we're going to be talking about the drug dealer whale approach to high performance. Now, you may think, well, that's kind of a little bit of an odd title, but let's look at where this comes from before we get into the actual strategy. So, first of all, let's look at possibly the last time that you were in a group of friends, or maybe on social media, and you had 1,000 people say that something that you did was really cool, but you had one person say something bad. And what did you focus on? You focused on that one bad thing. Why? Well, because that all of the emotional gratification that you were getting from everybody else was kind of this whole blanket thing that made you feel good. But see, even though you may have only had one negative comment, what happened was that need sucked you. Okay? So this phenomenon is basically called need sucking. It's when you have emotional gratifications, emotional needs sucked away from you because of something that somebody says or does. Now, most of the time, need sucking is accidental. You are probably doing this quite often, and people are probably doing it to you quite often. Now, here's the thing. Okay? Need sucking is not always bad if you know how to deal with it. Now, there's a whole other video that we're going to be talking about later on need sucking and how you can use it for improving your environment. But for now, let's focus on the drug dealer whale approach to high performance. So, why does it affect us more than all of the good stuff? Because our focus is on that one negative thing, because that is the one thing that has been taken away. See, imagine, for example, that you have $100 and it flies away into the fountain. Now, do you go in after it? Probably. Okay, so you'll find some way to get that thing out of there. But let's say somebody says, hey, I'll give you $100 to go into that fountain. Well, you're probably not going to do it, or maybe you'll at least think twice. Why? Because the emotional motivation is stronger when something is taken away than when we get something. So reward is less powerful than taking something away. So, does that always work? No. It only works when you know what is being taken away, when you already have what's being taken away. So let's look at the foundations that we must set up first before applying the drug dealer whale approach to high performance. The first thing you got to do is basically set expectations. You got to basically say, hey, here is what you need to do. Here is what needs to happen. Now, sometimes people kind of understand that completely. Sometimes they don't. But at least giving the basic guidelines. Now, when we're first starting this process, it needs to be easy. So, this is basically the whale training strategy. Now, how do they train whales? They take a rope and they put it in one corner of this big giant swimming pool, and every time the whale swims over the rope, the whale gets fish. Easy. Now, if after a while, okay, the whale seems to know when to do this, they raise the rope. They raise it about halfway up. Now, halfway up, the whale goes under, no fish. Whale goes over, fish. Whale learns this very easily. Why? Well, because it's still not really a big deal. So then they take the rope and they put it up to the top, almost to the top. So now the whale is actually going to have to go out of the water a little bit in order to go over the rope. Wow. that requires a little bit of extra effort because that essentially is the threshold. And then when they put it right at the edge of the water, the whale literally has to jump out, and that requires extra work. But once he's jumping out, it's easier to get him to jump higher and higher and higher and higher. So the idea here, of course, is to be able to do this with the people that we lead. So now let's look at what a drug dealer does, okay? So the drug dealer basically needs you to experience things before you can actually get hooked, right? So in order to really feel the potential of what is happening by climbing over the rope or jumping over the rope or basically performing at certain levels, we have to give people lots of emotional gratification so that they feel and they know what this emotional gratification is. So that essentially is letting them know what the reward is before we go into the strategy. Now let's look at the drug dealer approach. They come over to you and they say, "Hey man, here's some free drugs, man. Take it. It's free, man. Don't worry about it." So they get you to take the free drugs, and then later on you say, "Whoa, dude, that was some really good stuff." And they say, "Hey, man, no problem. Here's some more free drugs, dude." And so then they come, and now they're starting to really enjoy these drugs. And then they come back, and now the drug dealer says, "Well, okay, I don't really have any more of those samples, but I got some of my leftover stock I can sell you really cheap, man. But it's cheap." So now you've gone through threshold. Now the drug dealer has gotten you to pay for those drugs. Even though it's a small amount, you have paid. And so now you go back, and the drug dealer says, "Sorry, dude, no more samples, man. No more of the old stock. You got to pay more, man." And now you're hooked because you know what the drugs do, right? So you give him payment. And then what happens, of course, the drug dealer keeps increasing and increasing the prices as you go. So what does this all mean? How do we use this in order to achieve higher performance? How do we use need sucking, okay, which is what this is, for higher performance? So let's look at the whale and let's look at the drug dealer and combine them. So you get a guy that you are trying to develop into a high performer. So the first thing, of course, you get him to taste the drugs, the internal mental drugs, the feelings of extraordinary power that they get from feeling that they're doing a good job, that they're, making things happen. And you give it to them and you make it super easy for them to achieve what they need to achieve so they can get those internal drugs. So that's just like the rope. And then you just increase it high enough, a little bit, so that they understand the guidelines. And if they don't go over the rope, if they don't do that, then you just stop giving it to them. You don't give them the drugs. So eventually, no problem, because they learn they got to go over here. Now the next one, of course, is threshold. Now you got to do something extra. It's no longer easy. It's no longer like just kind of going over the rope. Now you got to jump out of the water in order to actually get the drugs, in order to get the emotional gratifications. And then every time it's a little bit higher and a little bit higher. See? But just like the whale, you can't take the rope and you put it up here, because the moment you start making super high KPIs, super high expectations, people can't reach those immediately. And so therefore, they end up giving up. But if you make them in steps, and see, this is the thing. Every time the next step happens, you don't have to say, "Oh, I'm going to give you this stuff." You just stop giving them what you're already giving them. You're taking away their emotional gratifications by not giving it to them. You are need-sucking them. So what do they want? They want to get that gratification of significance, of recognition. They want to get that gratification of security, of control. They want to get that recognition or the gratification of growth and achievement. They want to get all this stuff because that's what's giving them the drugs. So when you take it away, they will achieve that next level. and the next one, and the next one. And pretty soon, you have a high performer. So, what do we take away from this? Of course, the number one thing is don't do drugs. Number two, all you need to do is basically let people feel what it feels like to be a high performer and give them little steps that they must achieve. And if they don't, and the moment that you raise the bar, well, just stop giving them the feeling of the high performer until they hit it, then give it to them again, and then stop, then give it to them again as it goes higher and higher, and eventually you have high-performing teams, high-performing individuals, and you are an even more awesome leader. This is Arthur Carmazzi wishing you great success.